All right, it is working. Standing here like an idiot. Welcome along to yet another reading. I was going to do a random rant today, but then I remembered I liked reading my book. Forgotten all about that. And I've just finished editing one of the latest chapters, which is all about how we get stuck with either expressing ourselves or moving forward in some form of action because we think we don't know how, and we have to wait until we know how before we can do it. So anybody who doesn't speak their mind because they don't know how to do it, or they don't start that new project because they don't know how to start, or anything like that, we're going to be talking about that particular problem, or that myth, that illusion that you need to know before you get started. We'll see how that goes. So thank you, a couple of people joining already, which is awesome. Feel free to chuck your comments in and feedback and everything as I rant away. So let me just get that sorted here. Alrighty, so the stickiness problem of being a dumbass. Other words, not knowing how. Now I got a little quote to start off from Thomas Rhett. The quote is, "You don't start out getting into the gym and bench pressing 300 pounds. You start out by doing the bar." Alrighty, let's get into it. The how-to problem. Now, many of my clients first describe the barriers they face as how-to problems, as in, I don't know how to do it. Most of us do this, don't we? We think the reason we're stuck, unable to move forward or speak our minds, is because we are missing some crucial piece of information, an important key to unlock the door in front of us. We either sit around waiting for this breakthrough to occur spontaneously, or we absorb information passively, for example, binging on self-help books, in the hope that some magic pill will emerge to set us free. While we claim loudly to ourselves and others that we truly desire change and are ready to take some honest action, we say, "I would if I could," we struggle with how to take the first action or say the first word that will really get things moving. I'll edit there. Unfortunately, in my experience, this how-to problem is rarely the real reason you can't move forward, but it serves as an effective excuse. Someone who doesn't know how to do something cannot be expected to do it, right? Except nobody ever knows how to do something the first time they try it. You're only born knowing how to grasp, suckle, and cry. Everything else has been learned since then, with a starting point of zero knowledge or experience. So the legitimacy of this excuse is highly suspect. Not knowing how was always a problem you were able to solve for every skill you've acquired or task you've successfully completed. Even when you receive teaching or instructions before you start, you still do a majority of your learning through experience. I was trained extensively on how to manage criminal offenders before I ever had face-to-face interview with one, but that training counted for nothing once a real individual sat in the room with me. The first person I ever tried to rehabilitate did not match any of the behaviors I was trained to expect and deal with. I had to wing it. Over time, I learned how to manage offenders by managing offenders. While additional outside information helped me get better over time, it was useless for helping me start. Information overwhelm. In my first book in this trilogy, Nothing to Lose, I talked about the information trap we see in the modern self-help movement. You're constantly being told that there's something wrong with you and that you need more information, resources, and content to fix yourself. So you sit there watching videos or reading books and even attending seminars, hoping to finally absorb that crucial piece of secret information you're missing that will unblock you. You figure the next piece of content will reveal how to do what you want, an easy step-by-step way, and that will solve all your problems. That's why marketing headlines like "this one simple trick" are sure to get you clicking the mouse like a slobbering Pavlovian puppy. It breaks my heart to be the one to ruin this fantasy for you, but you're chasing a fucking rainbow. There's no piece of information you're missing. You already have everything you need to know to get started. Yes, you need to learn new things to grow, but that is not your real problem. The issue has nothing to do with how to. If it were that simple, you'd find it with a few quick internet searches. YouTube has every how-to question answered for free. A more helpful question you need to be asking is this: why haven't I started yet? Let's talk about something called the brute force method. In cryptography, there's a code cracking method known as brute force. Basically, if you have an impossibly complex password to uncover, you can break it eventually by simply trying every possible combination. You get yourself a supercomputer that can crunch massive amounts of data, and you tell it to try every combination of numbers, letters, and symbols that are mathematically possible. You do them all until you hit the jackpot. Now, what happens when you try this approach? Given a long enough timeline, there is only one eventual outcome. You will crack the code. If you have an unlimited time and perseverance and the ability to try every combination, success will be inevitable, even if you start with no clues and no idea what code to try first. Now, why do I bring this up? Because it applies to everything else in life too. At least the unchanging truths about how to function well in the world. The how-to of expressing yourself honestly can also be solved with this approach, if no other support were available. You could figure it out on your own with no help from others, though it would take a little longer. I have an issue with expressing myself accurately when I'm stressed. The other day, literally just the other day, I was slowly getting stressed throughout the morning with traffic and unexpected tasks and being late on my work. And then I dropped a box full of strawberries all over the ground and finally just snapped. I was now in a full-blown stress attack, as I call it. I started rushing around, snapping unreasonably at my girlfriend when she was trying to help, and basically just making things worse. I wanted to talk it out, but I didn't know how. So first, I just said, I think I'm stressed. From there, I tried to explain why. Then I tried to instruct my girl on how she could help me through it. Then I cried for some reason. Then we talked some more and figured out I'd been working too hard and holding in some resentments. One attempt at a time, we slowly cracked the code. If you try every possible nutrition plan available and measure your results carefully, you'll eventually find one that helps you get in shape and achieve the level of health you desire. If you can survive enough rejections and misunderstandings to try every possible way of building a connection with someone, from being a stranger through to creating a relationship of some kind, you'll eventually unravel the core principles of how to build a healthy connection. If you split test marketing ideas with endless patience and careful measurement, you'll eventually find one that performs highly and brings in revenue to create a successful business. I have used brute force method in all the above examples. I tried dozens of eating plans with no success until I discovered intermittent fasting, cholesterol reduction medication, high-intensity training, and ice-cold showers. Now I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I got rejected by literally thousands of women before I finally figured out how to put my neediness aside and just be honest with them. And as I write this, I'm about to get married to my dream girl. I had to borrow nearly 80 grand to get my coaching business running well, and again, as I write this, my business is finally paying the bills consistently and I'm repaying the loan. Brute force method may appear time-consuming and painful with a high failure rate. This is true at first. Also, it may appear you don't have the resources to crack the code with this kind of approach. This is not so true. You don't need as many resources as you think. Maybe you don't have enough money to try all those ads. Maybe you don't have enough time to cook every meal option. Maybe you can't handle that much social rejection. But you do have enough to get started, to move the needle on the dial just a little. You certainly don't need any more information on how to get started. Any random attempt at cracking the code will do for now. You don't need any guidance to get moving. You can randomly pull an action out of a mental hat and try it out. You require literally zero how-to tips to begin living more honestly. Just try and speak honestly. That first attempt will give you feedback on how close you are, making you wiser for your next attempt. This is why I believe the question, why haven't I started yet, is far more important than how do I start. You could already start without needing any further information by just engaging in random trial and error. So why haven't you? You're just scared to get it wrong, but getting it wrong is actually more productive than doing nothing at all. Maybe those are your only two options, getting it wrong or doing nothing. Which is better in the longer term? The beauty is that we don't have to endlessly try one random combination after another without direction. Like Alan Turing breaking the Nazi code, which changed daily, and unlike a computer applying brute force method, we can actually learn from every attempt. This is where it finally becomes beneficial to acquire new information. See, most people absorb information without taking any action first. They seek the answer on the how-to question without having tried anything on their own yet. And because of this, they're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, which is experiential learning. Your attempts will not... Your attempts will show you the next step. Even when you get it wrong, you're learning how not to do it. You must fuck it up. I suggest you experiment with a new approach to honesty and integrity. Rather than absorbing information prior to action, or even going for blind trial and error, try beginning your journey into something unknown by engaging in calculated draft attempts. Namely, go out and get it wrong first, and then come back and reflect over your results. You can use guidance, information, and support, but only after you try something, so that you learn specifically from your failures rather than trying to prevent them from happening. It's a simple yet undervalued approach to making progress. Guess the code, get it wrong, learn from the mistake, then start over again. This is my 3X model at work. Explore with a guess, engage in an experimental attempt, release pressure to succeed, and instead just measure what really happened. Then have another guess, this time a little better informed by experience. David is a Brojo coach that I trained. In each session, David told me about what he attempted with his clients during the previous week. We'd look at it together, and I reflected my perspective to give him tips on what might improve future attempts for the same intentions. Even without my support, David could still just shoot away in the dark, hoping to one day hit the mark with his client based on guesswork and intuition. In doing so, he'd still be living by values of curiosity, courage, and determination, and eventually he'd learn to become a masterful coach. David could just sit at home reading books without coaching. Let's start again. David could just sit at home reading books about coaching in the hope that he will acquire enough how-to wisdom to answer any question his clients might have, but this will mean he never becomes a great coach outside of his own head. Luckily, David is not an information binger. He chose to make an attempt with his clients and then come to learn more from his attempt by working with me so that he could fine-tune his next attempt. He took action, then asked the how-to question afterwards, rather than the other way around. He was willing to fuck it up in order to learn. You don't need to know everything before you start. In fact, you don't need to know anything before you start. This will only slow you down and overwhelm you with options. True freedom of movement does not come from knowing all the answers. It comes from giving yourself the permission to fuck it up and get it wrong. And you'll be better able to give yourself permission to get it wrong if you have a plan to review it and learn from your mistakes after you make them. Plan to make mistakes rather than avoid them. If you swap your strategy of information absorption to avoid failure with considered mistake making, your success rate will drastically improve. Drafting. Another client of mine, we'll call her Bella, is an artist with a perfectionist psyche. This makes life difficult when she wants to do something like drawing and painting, because actions that are supposed to be honest, creative, and free-flowing are severely impacted by the pressure to get it right. When I delved into this perfectionism with her, we could see that she had a script in her mind that told her that her work must be done to a certain standard. Yet Bella was not able to articulate or clearly define what the standard was exactly, making it impossible to achieve because there was no way to measure her attempts. No matter what she drew, her brain would eventually conclude it did not meet the standard. When faced with a blank canvas, Bella would suffer a mental block. She would be unable to get started because her brain would be pushing her to reach a certain standard before she had even begun, while simultaneously acknowledging that this was impossible. This is like trying to force yourself to jump off a high building. Your brain thinks it's a pointlessly painful thing to do, so it throws up mental blocks to prevent you endangering yourself and wasting your time. Bella was experiencing this resistance before she even put brush to canvas. You may be able to relate. It's also known by the names of procrastination and overthinking. We finally broke through Bella's blocks by introducing a new concept called drafting. By giving herself permission to deliberately and intentionally fail in the first attempts of any new piece of artwork, Bella relieved herself of the pressure of perfectionism. She would start each art project with permission to have no idea what she was doing, literally just applying a paintbrush. Literally just applying paint to a brush and moving it toward the paper. After doing this for a while, she'd sit back and observe the random painting, decide what needed to be improved, and then discard that first draft. Now, this step was important. She had to know she was definitely not going to keep the first draft, no matter what it looked like, for her to have freedom to start without the pressure to be perfect. Eventually, through a series of constantly improving drafts, she would create a piece of art that she liked. You can apply this to your honest expression and action taking as well. Notice right now that you, too, may hold yourself to a similar impossible and intangible standards. Look at what you are trying to achieve and let go of the final perfect version. Rather than thinking of a perfect way to ask out the cute guy at your work or confront your boss, just try it, get it wrong, and learn from this for your next attempt. Ask yourself what it would mean to just do a first draft attempt with full permission to get it wrong so that you have something to learn from, a foundation to build upon. This way, rather than accumulating an overwhelming store of ultimately useless knowledge before you begin, you will grow your wisdom through a combination of experimentation and reflection. This is the 3X model in action. Now, next chapter, we'll look at how to apply drafting practically in several different common self-development areas. All right, so that was that one. Bit of a shorter chapter, which is good. Definitely keen to hear your feedback. I honestly, almost every client I have thinks that their problem is that they don't know how to do something, and yet they haven't even tried anything. They haven't even had a guess, right? And I see this all the time, and it's almost certainly, anybody watching this, it's almost certainly one of your biggest problems. You think you don't have enough information. The problem is you don't have enough action. You're not just willing to get it wrong. And you've been trained. You've been trained your whole life. From school, don't get it wrong. Instead of get it wrong so you can learn. I want to finish off. There was a story, the ex-CEO, I think, of Yahoo. Can't remember her name for the life of me. But she talked about when she was a child, they'd sit around the dinner table as a family, and her father would go around and say, "How did you fail today?" And if they hadn't failed, he'd be disappointed. Rather than how did you succeed or questions to that extent. He always wanted to know how they tried something and failed. And that, in my opinion, is such a better approach to encouraging and confidence building parenting than than rewarding them for where they did well, But yeah, that's the thing. You've been trained your whole life to not get it wrong, which is ridiculous because your first attempt is always going to be getting it wrong. There's always going to be better than you could do your first time. So you got to get that first time, second time, third time out of the way before you even start to get good at something, right? You're not going to be able to dance like a fucking professional in your first dance class. It's ridiculous to think that way. And yet this is what you apply. You won't even speak your mind, right? You won't even say what you're thinking because your brain's going, I don't know how to say it. Well, then say that. So I don't know how to say this, but blah, blah, blah. Just do it. Watch what comes out. It won't be right. It'll be a mess. You'll stutter and stumble and you'll get the words wrong and you won't really convey the concept properly. But after that, you'll be much wiser about what it was you were trying to say. You'll be like, that's not quite it. What I really mean is blah, blah, blah. And you slowly circle around and you'll get there, No, you don't know what to do at the gym. Well, go there and throw some fucking weights around. See what happens. Then get a personal trainer and say, hey, look, I tried to do this with the weights. Is this right? And they'll correct you. But they'll be correcting your first attempt, not correcting nothing, right? You got to give them something to correct. Hope that helps. Thanks to those of you who joined and had a little listen. and I'll see you guys next week for the next installment, perhaps. Who knows? If I'm alive, that's what I'll do. Cheers.